Barbara Boxer. For those who don't know who she is, she's now retired, but she
California.
was a very liberal Republican, Democratic senator from California. She had the other seat besides Dianne Feinstein. I
Yep.
said Barbara Boxer would have beaten Donald Trump, and he looked at me and he said, "You're right." There was a tremendous anti-Hillary vote in this country too because
Yes.
of the whole the scandals, whether it's
Establishment.
email,
Yep.
Filegate, there was
And
Filegate.
yes,
She has a whole list of scandals going back when she was first lady. So she had a lot of negatives. You don't want a lot of negatives when you're a political candidate. Literally any other national Democrat would have beaten Donald Trump. And I'm done speaking.
fair enough. Okay. So I mean, Trump did, though I recall now, he was really running on the I'm not in the broken system. I'm not from the broken system. I'm from outside the system. So I can manipulate the system in ways that the people who are stuck in the system cannot. That the system's broken. There's all these compromised people in it. They're ineffective, incapable. I'm from outside the system. I'll be able to make some moves or whatever. That and that was very appealing to a lot of folks.
Can
Uh,
I just point out,
yeah,
Tyler, one other thing,
yeah,
which is don't forget that DeSantis being Florida governor, he's at the forefront of the climate debate, and given climate change is one of the biggest things to associate with wokeism, he's actually got quite an interesting position because he's advocating for the difference of climate adaptation, not mitigation. And after what we saw this year with Florida's, extreme weather patterns, I think it's also going to be interesting to see how over the next couple of years and 2024 and onwards he influences the minds of Republican voters who were once, say, climate deniers or whatever, and actually do start to believe, well, maybe we should enact policies that help us, adapt to the extreme weather events that we've seen. Because Trump's just an outright denier and doesn't want to do anything about it. So I think there's that also nuance there, which I would watch if you're emphasizing the wokeism
good point.
point.
Okay, here we go. Any other non-tech news before we get into the tech news? Going once.
I shared the news about the opposition of the guy who was in opposition to Russian, Putin. He was one of his
Navalny.
like very person who supported him and all that, but when he went against him, he's now dead. Like, just wanted to share that.
Okay. What else here? I'm just looking at the trending tweets. It's all about the midterms. No surprise. Okay, so now we can do the tech news. Where's the air horn? There it is. Here we go. So happy November 9th, 2022. We're just around the corner from 2023. And the top story today is that Mark Zuckerberg says Meta will lay off 13% or 11,000 team members and will cut discretionary spending and extend its hiring freeze through Q1. Oh, wow. Who would have known? If only some handsome aging tech bro would have came in here yesterday and gave us a big rant about how ad-based social media companies are going to have to cut like there's no tomorrow, which is why Twitter had to as well. It's actually the main reason Twitter had to do that. Don't forget that. Don't get caught up in the whole Elon's the goddamn devil story that the press are now going to try and push on you endlessly because he's going to knock their socks off and they're going to try and do to him what they've been doing to Facebook. But by the way, it wasn't the press that hurt Facebook. It was Apple. Don't get it twisted. The Facebook files, Facebook actually continued to increase. Everything was going fine during all of the Frances Haugen whistleblower nonsense, which turned out to be nothing. And the real turning point was when Apple drew out its long katana sword and just slit the throat of Facebook, and with removing its juicy data that they were getting from iPhone users. So now they're going to cut 13%. This is, by the way, the first time in Facebook's history that they're cutting people. This is very significant. And some investors would say long overdue. And Benedict Evans tweeted saying Meta getting out of D2C, the direct-to-consumer VR hardware, would be quite a big deal if they if they give that up, they, what a precarious situation Zuck finds himself in at the moment, uh, betting all in on VR as he has, perhaps prematurely. But if he catches that wave, he'll be the next Google. But if he misses it, he's risking the future of the company on VR. It's wild. Ballsy bet, very ballsy bet. But at the moment, it's costing them a very significant staff cut. Okay. Next is Binance CEO CZ says Binance signed a non-binding letter of intent to acquire FTX and help cover its liquidity crunch pending due diligence. That was the big story yesterday that we read, and it's still the second biggest story today. And it's because it has broader implications than just CZ or uh, FTX, one of the major exchanges. It has. It's caused a downturn in crypto, kind of generally speaking. Even Bitcoin took a bit of a dive, of about 10%. The whole crypto space is kind of licking some wounds today, as perhaps it should, because this whole FTX drama has exposed that even one of the expected strong, poster childs of good behavior turned out to be um, vulnerable, and then it's forcing a new situation, which is coming up in one of the next headlines that I'll get into here. There's a bunch of sister articles here, so actually there's six little daughter articles to the one I just read. One is from the Financial Times that Binance's CEO says FTX near collapse severely shook confidence in the crypto industry. Yeah, that's my point. Offers some deal details and halts FTT sales. The FTX's CEO, Sam Bankman-Fried's estimated $15.6 billion fortune has been eviscerated in days by the demise of FTX and Alameda, dropping to about $1 billion, the largest one-day collapse of personal net worth ever, losing about $15 billion in one day.
But he's still better off than most people. I mean, this is the thing that gets me when I read that. I mean, that they sold all this nonsense to other people who truly got hurt, and even if he goes from 15 billion to 1 billion, he's at 1 billion. So he still made out really well on the garbage. And as I pointed out Monday, when he made those denials, I said it was reminiscent to me of denials that Lehman made 3 months before they collapsed. Because I've seen this. I've been around too long that when you get these kind of denials from these financial firms, you got a problem, because you could blow away a financial firm very quickly, that when there's even a whiff of a problem,
Didn't
because of counterparty risk that wouldn't happen with an industrial company or something. You know.
didn't we see similar denials from Credit Suisse about a month ago, 2 months ago?
Which, by the way, just issued by the way, they just issued bonds at a very high interest rate last night. I think they're paying like 9% or something. So so they at least though got funding. So because they got funding, no one's going to worry about them for a while, because they took in a lot of money. They were able to issue bonds, but they had to pay a dearly for interest. Yeah.
Next
So,
daughter.
Donna, can I just
Hey, Donna.
chime in for a few
Sure.
seconds on the FTX Binance? The market is really saying that it's unclear whether Binance is really going to go through with this deal. They're not really giving a huge hug around FTX in order to give confidence to the market. It's rumored that the hole in FTX now is about 10 billion, and effectively, not only is it, meaning FTX.com, not the U.S. That it is insolvent, as is its trading company. I'm not so sure in the end of the day that Ken Sam, even though he is quite wealthy, have kind of skirted a lot of the what will be potentially fraud, criminal, or other kind of investigations that will go on. And so I think that there's a lot still to unravel. The market is still going to have a lot of loans that are outstanding that are collateralized by FTT tokens and other kinds of tokens that are non-marketable, and so there are a lot of lenders on both sides of the SBF equation that are going to be stuck and standing in a queue for whatever kind of insolvency might be, especially if Binance doesn't step in. But well orchestrated debacle by CZ, which is going to end up in a lot more regulation on centralized exchanges. People are now calling for everybody having proof of reserves, which is not a bad thing at all. But do notice that DeFi has been resilient from the Terra Luna situation through to today.
And what, Donna, do you have any insight on the rumors that CZ did this because he heard that Sam was meeting with regulators and kind of pointing out?
Yeah, no, that's true. CZ even said that. He said he did not appreciate that he was meeting with regulators. This regulation thing has been going on quite a long time. A lot of people were unhappy with what Sam was doing. That he was also kind of putting DeFi in on a level field with centralized exchanges in terms of regulation, but that he was also pointing to Binance as the Chinese exchange, and that it might be doing some things that needed to be looked at differently. And so, even though CZ, as most people probably know, was helped in nurturing and incubating originally FTX, and as a consequence had a huge amount of these FTT tokens,
Yeah,
which they didn't buy back. There were a lot of obvious signs that things were wrong. You saw Brett Harrison resign of being president of FTX. You saw Sam, I think it's like tobacco or something, say that he was resigning also as head of Lydia, and so you saw these people leaving. I don't think anybody knew exactly how much cross lending was going on between the two, especially of customer funds. So there's a lot to still sort out there, but I do think that people that had their funds there, it's problematic for them, including a lot of institutions, which is as big a problem now for the space as retail. Of course, we don't want anybody to get hurt, but the institutions were feeling very comfortable with FTX, and now they're going to have to obviously step back and see if their funds are released or however else they were trading. I know a lot of people were getting off already on Sunday. Some of the big traders as well as institutions knew that this was in the cards.
okay. For those who want to get into the what happened play-by-play chronology, background, past, present, and future, my friend Jason Calacanis did a podcast yesterday on this week in startups, which is on YouTube, and they go through the kind of the play-by-play of why the FTT coins, when Binance had a $2 billion worth of them and tried to liquidate them rather in short order, which caused the price of that to crash. That coin, which is used internally at an FTX, which spooked or shook the FTX users, to do a kind of a digital run on the bank as it is, and they don't have all of the funds available. And by the way, neither do real banks generally. And that leads to the next article, which is how the Binance exacerbated a bank run on FTX before offering to acquire the company, and why the potential deal represents the fall of. Oh no, where did it go? Oh, here we go. In the wake of the dramatic fall, Binance and others exchanges pledged to release their reserve certificates and being totally transparent about what they're holding, because the fear is that Sam was taking user deposits, for lack of a better word, and using those, too many of them, uh, to fund other things and keep um, other projects going that needed to keep going, that would enable the FTX to keep going. It's kind of a convoluted, messy.
No, hey, Donna, doesn't it all sound like John Corzine and MF Global?
Sorry, but MF Global also was regulated by the CFTC and as such, it did have insurance on customer accounts as well. It is reminiscent of it in that he took customer funds that should have been segregated. Here, we don't have rules that have to be segregated.
Well, by the way, there's another article that says hours after announcing an emergency deal with Binance, uh, Sam from FTX deleted a Twitter thread saying that the exchange and the assets were fine because he wants to erase the history book on that one, I guess. Little egg on his face there. Solana crashes 30%, Bitcoin falls 10%, and Ether drops 15% as a result of this, and it's because of it's spooking the whole space a bit,
I want to
as
ask
it
a question,
probably
Tyler.
should. Yeah,
So for tweets, right? Like these people, they do some tweets and then they delete it, right? So in any event that there's any investigation ongoing and they need to go through the record, will Twitter be able to trace back all those deleted tweets?
sure.
Okay, so
Yeah,
there
and in
still
this
has to be a
instance,
record.
it's enough photographs and retweeting and everything else of it.
So Coinbase, one of the other exchanges, their stock's down 10%. Robinhood Markets, which now handles crypto, closed down 19% as a result of all of this. And that's pretty much it for the crypto apocalypse. And then our friend Jane Wong in Hong Kong asked, because she's wasn't around during the initial Web 1.0, 99 2000 Nasdaq, public market crash of tech, and she asked a great question. I thought she says, "Is this what it was like in when the first big web crash?" Because if you're big into crypto, what happened yesterday feels a bit concerning, and people are losing faith in the whole enterprise and whatever. And there is similarities, and I had my own response to Jane, but so did a lot of people. And the people who were around in 99 and the big Web 1.0 bubble all made the similar points, which is if Coinbase and Binance both now fall apart in the next couple weeks, then you would have an understanding and the proper taste or smell of what it was like during Web 1.0, the 99 2000 crash, where there was a lot of non geeks back then that were laughing, saying, I told you so. And by the way, there's people doing that now about crypto, but there was no reason left to be optimistic. It was really only the diehard geeks who still had faith and hope that tech was, what it had been the year, months previously, and that it would return, and that had confidence that it would return. That's why I say, for those who weren't around to experience that turn of events, yeah, this feels like the beginnings of the Web 1.0 bubble popping.
Tyler, can I
Yeah,
can I provide a
yeah, please
perspective
do.
on that too?
Yeah,
Having lost a leg or whatever. So Ed Zander put it properly. I had left Sun right in '99, and the climate in the '90s, it was an expanding economy, kind of across the board, across markets. The globalization had the full wind just driving it. So, like all sectors, were just money was rolling everywhere, and on top of that, there was the intoxication of Web one. But what happened was it was a he called it, and Ed Zander at that point was the CEO of Sun. He called it the triple storm or whatever. It was a perfect storm, right? It was the collapse of the telcos wanting to even buy anything for the hardware, right, to support the build out of the servers. It was the collapse of all the .com stuff. And what was the third thing? Oh my God, sorry, just on half a cup of coffee so far. And then it was just the big counter cyclical. We got into, I don't know if it was a recession but all I mean the whole economy cooled off right as we were going in starting the new millennium. So it was a perfect storm. What's happening now is not anything at all. It's just not we're not there at all at quite. We're doing a restructuring, so I can see how it could totally get there, because the restructuring is going to be pretty painful. But at this moment in time, right now, it's not quite there. Will this quite get there? We'll have to wait and see. So,
Yep.
yeah, sorry, just
Yeah. Again, you're saying in you know in so many words exactly the same sentiments that everyone who lived through it says. Like,
And there
yeah,
was another similarity, even though we didn't have that kind of inflation. Greenspan, who was the Fed chair, had started raising rates. And once he started raising rates, valuations got recalibrated. And that's what everybody forgets about when you're dealing with, these valuations on these growth companies that a lot of them don't even make money yet, is that they're entirely predicated on interest rates. You raise interest rates, the valuations collapse. And everyone forgot that lesson.
another piece was I was doing my own, like Latino.com, and people in Latin America were still smoking the .com pipe for a good part of 2000, well beyond the cliff was in April, if I recall, in 2000. Like just of just the free fall started. I forget which day it was, but through Latin America, they were still having conferences. Oh yeah, like in Miami, and Miami being not literally in Latin America, but it was the center of the world for a lot of Latin American activity on this stuff, but also in Mexico and even Brazil. So in any case, there is, you can see reality, but still not act appropriately and consistent with reality, even though you see it.
okay. Next topic.
Yeah, I was going to add a point actually. What's been really interesting on my, I was, sort of adult enough to see the first crash, and then now it's interesting with the founders I work with. The last 6 months, a lot of them who are younger don't understand that they don't know. Like I try to tell them, hey, look, interest rates are rising, which means your valuation is going to get cut. You better think about lowering your valuation when you go out fundraising, and they just don't listen to me. And then they go and they literally, it's 2 or 3 months of wasted time because they go and hit the fundraising road. Then they come back and they go, oh, actually, yeah, you're right. But 2 or 3 months, you've already started burning and you're still behaving like it's like 2021. And it's really sad when you see that. Like, it's just sometimes you only learn when you experience it. And even if you tell a founder, they just look at you as some old guy. Uh, and they have to go and learn for themselves. When they hear from 5 other investors, 10 other investors, they suddenly get the message.
Okay, so the next topic is an update from Twitter about verified accounts. Esther Crawford, aka the mother who slept at the office in her, I believe it was a North Face sleeping bag, rather stylish, I must say. Um, she tweeted 17 hours ago that a lot of folks have asked about how you'll be able to distinguish between Twitter Blue subscribers with blue check marks and accounts that were verified as official previously, which is why we're introducing the official label to select accounts when we launch. So you might have noticed on some Twitter accounts, it'll say business as in little gray text underneath with a little photo of a briefcase next to the word business, or it might say charity, or it might say, a kind of a classifier, light gray text under the Twitter's, account name. So now it will say official with a check in gray, light gray, as a subtle kind of a thing. And that will be the new signifier that this is who they claim to be, that Twitter has verified them. Because, by the way, that is more seemingly the new Twitter blue check mark verification process isn't even as rigorous as that. And I wonder, you'll have accounts with both. So you'll have an official account, which is marked as official, that also pays for Twitter the $8 a month and also has a blue check mark. And then you'll have um, official accounts that don't have blue check marks anymore. And then you'll have plenty of blue check mark accounts that aren't official. So, and the idea is that, and she made clear, not all accounts that are currently official or verified. I would be a good example. I'm verified. Uh, I probably won't get the official stamp under my name because I'm not an official company or government account or major media outlet or public figure, which needs such a mark. So we'll see. But it seems like a lot of people with blue checks today won't have them unless they upgrade to the new Twitter Blue. Anyway, there you go. So the next one,
Okay, so sorry,
Question real
so
quick. Sorry.
Tyler, so you're saying that the official is a given one and is verified, and the blue is a paid one.
correct.
Okay.
And all
What
the people who have blue checks today, not all of them will be given the official
Of
stamp.
course, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
what's the threshold for public? What would you call them? Public.
Question: public notoriety.
Yeah. What's that threshold? I'm not sure what metrics do they use.
The examples she gave are celebrities and businesses and government officials and whatever, but not all of them. She said. So it's not. It's ambiguous and nebulous. Is the answer?
So will CoffeeZilla get one?
Great question. That would be an interesting edge case, I think,
Why would somebody pay for the blue check mark if it's not the official one?
because it verifies that they are a human and not a bot, and then they get other Twitter Blue benefits, um, and they are seen higher in the responses. This is actually a great question you're asking, Ken, because this leads. I hope everyone asks that question because it will. If you ask that question properly and answer that question properly, it will then tell you the future product roadmap of Twitter, which is far bigger than the innocent question implies or supposes,
And at
which
this
is
moment, it's not ready yet, right? So they shouldn't. Yeah, I
right.
mean, I don't
But
think many people will be
they're gonna
interested. Yeah.
they're gonna build Twitter around this $8 a month subscription, which will enable, if Twitter was relatively bot free, and if the Twitter algorithm was based around people that have paid for uh, the $8 a month and the verification, then interesting things happen. Advertisers are very happy because now they're advertising in a relatively bot free area. Twitter consumers are happier. There's no bot scam influence, and a lot of the negative stuff that happens in Twitter today would be solved essentially. But to do that is going to require people to pay $8 a month, and the question is, will people pay that? If they do, boy, Twitter is going to be in great shape, and it's a big if. Uh, but if that works out, that's a lot. That's 100 million people. It's actually 150 million. How many? If let's say 50 million, one third of them verify, that's a lot of new revenue coming in for Twitter, and makes them less dependent on ads, makes the experience arguably better for everybody involved. Let's see if they can get that flywheel, that snowball
So, but
rolling.
Tyler, they're flying in the opposite of every other thing in social media. So let me explain why.
I understand.
Okay, okay, no. On YouTube, you pay a premium not to see ads, not
Yep.
to. So with Twitter, by now paying to basically prove that you're a human, so you're not a bot, so you'd be more attractive to advertisers. You're actually going to be attracting advertising that you may not want to see. Okay,
Right.
so that's the first negative. Okay, and then if you look at all of the ad-supported tiers that are going in, like Netflix and everything, or what Peacock does, they're saying we'll give you a lower price if you're willing to sit through ads. Twitter's now created a system where basically pay us money and you'll get more ads. Okay, this is effectively what you're defining it as, because the advertisers don't want to advertise the bots.
But
Okay, so I don't think this is going to work, because every other situation that you could look at, is you pay money to get away from ads, not
Yeah,
to attract them. You know.
right. And it might not work. The difference, the reason for the difference is because social networks start from zero and build on the usership, where Netflix doesn't. Your Netflix experience and your YouTube experience matter very little, if anyone, if there are any other actual users at all. Where the Twitter experience is fundamental based on the usership of the other users. So you need a critical mass of users to make Twitter useful. And now that it has got there, now it can go into the second chapter of its product roadmap, which will be enabled by verified users, etc. So to be continued on how that rolls out. The next topic, Wall Street Journal says they have sources that Taiwan Semiconductor, TSMC, plans to announce a second chip-making factory north of Phoenix, Arizona, in Dr. Francine's backyard. In the coming months, investing roughly $12 billion and aiming to make 3 nanometer chips in the United States of America. Thank you very much. So go ahead and attack Taiwan whenever you're ready there, Uncle G, because the sweet 3 nanometer chips are going to be happening in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah, but Kyler, the next, the 1 nanometer, and I'm not sure as in 2 nanometers. It's gonna stay in Taiwan. So please continue to, we need to maintain a good relationship, please.
Hey, BB, if I'm a Taiwanese now, I'll be so pissed with what Tyler just said.
Yes, actually it is, but we still need to keep good relationship. No. in Chinese we say 人在屋檐下不得不低头. Sure, and you don't need to explain that.
So research suggests Apple collects data about iPhone usage even when the iPhone analytics setting is turned off. Even when disabling the sharing of device analytics is turned off, it's still sharing your device data or collecting data. And there was a tweet today from a former Twitter developer telling a really interesting story of how the sales department was coming to the development department and saying, hey, we have one of America's big telecommunications companies, mobile carriers, so that narrows it down to 3 companies, has a feature request. They would like to buy all kinds of data. Can you guys, the geeks in the company, please make it possible for this big carrier to get access to this data that they're asking for, because they will pay us millions of dollars a month to do this. And they were the developers were kind of spooked by this and had some meetings with them and everything else. And the carrier made it clear that what they really wanted was to find out when their users, their customers, let's assume it's AT&T. It could be Verizon or T-Mobile for all I know. But let's just for the sake of simplicity imagine that it's Verizon. And Verizon was asking, for example, they want to know when Verizon customers are going into the stores of their competitors. And that's what this mobile carrier was asking Twitter to do and was willing to pay lots of money for it. And this developer said, I decided to quit as the leader of that team rather than build that functionality to sell to that U.S. mobile carrier. Again, whoever it is, I don't know. He refused and he resigned. And then he was asked, while resigning, would you consider staying and building this if we literally backed up a truck full of cash and dumped it on you? Is there any amount that you would stay for? But there was a lot of money that they were being offered to do this. But the guy quit on principle. But that it's an interesting revelation in that these things happen all the time in these data, companies. Just to give you an idea of just how
Tyler,
much.
geolocation is a common attribute, as we have always discussed, that's tracked, right, via a lot of your apps, not just Twitter, right? So the functionality was probably some sort of an API integration, because it's already, most apps are tracking your geolocation unless you turn it off, or many of them are on your phone. So you might want to check those. And to the point of notifying users, as long as they've said something broadly in the privacy policy that covers that, and again, those can be pretty non-transparent as to how
Yep.
they're saying that we track all metrics on you, blah blah blah, and we sell, and all they have to do is use the word sale in there, or that we provide it to our service providers, as Twitter's on a phone, it needs a service provider, and they are tracking that closely with your geolocation. Another thing that you're going to start seeing are like billboards that change based on when you walk up, because they're tracking the geo on your phone and they know your data. So the billboard will become, digital billboards will, can start delivering customized ads to the user. I mean, that's how close they're getting with a lot of this stuff. So that's interesting. It's just
Yeah.
more of
And
that stuff.
the developer conceded that the legal department at Twitter blessed this deal, saying that it's compliant with our terms of service. To your point.
It's
So,
interesting that the developer drew a line in the sand, though. I would think that, especially with the added, truck of money, it sounds like it's a money problem. But the fact that the person stood up for the principle of it, I'm surprised that there are people like that who do that and then come out about that. Because how does that affect like that person's ability to get a job if that's what they're specializing in? So I don't know how you sell that after that, but
That's
kudos
it.
to them.
There's plenty of people who are anti-tracking or more transparency in tracking, and that's what all the legislation is trying to get to, but is not getting through, because obviously companies have interests in their advertisers, and continue to do what they're doing without consumers understanding. It's the discussion that we keep having about your data. But the other thing is for people to actually, I mean, privacy policies are a pain in the ass. I mean, even if I read them, they're terribly worded, and most people aren't going to understand them, even if it's in plain English. So one is to read privacy policies, if you have the time, of your apps. But the second step is, a lot of them is to actually go and check the functionality on the app. So go check what permissions it's asking for, and go into your privacy settings and see what it's gotten. Because in addition to being required to disclose it in a privacy policy, a lot of them may disclose it broadly and get these permissions on your phone that you don't really understand, or not all of them are compliant. Look how many are being pulled from the iPhone and the Android store. Don't assume that all of these people or apps are doing what they say that they are completely compliant. A lot of them can sideload and pull data from, I just saw this thing on it, that they can pull data from other apps on your phones without you have necessarily granted that permission or understanding that that's what you granted. So just look at the actual functionality of the things that are on your phone, because basically you're pulling if you have one of these devices, you're giving up a shit ton of data. And just be aware of that. I mean, there's good and bad things around that, but to be aware of it.
So we basically have no control over these devices and their amazing tracking and monitoring
No, you do have
devices
some
for
control.
us.
You have a lot of control, but you may not have all the control you think you have. So
okay.
just to be aware of it. And honestly, in my view, go check the apps and see what permissions they've accessed on your phone, versus trying to read a privacy policy and figure out what it's doing. And just be aware of how the phone. I mean, be aware of your environment. Be aware of what the phone is delivering to you. Um, Social media. What's it delivering to you, and why? Just be a little bit more skeptical and aware. That's where this world's going.
Okay. So Apple's working on a custom accessibility mode for the next update of iOS, codenamed Clarity, helping make the iPhone and iPad user interface more user-friendly. Blockchain intelligence startup called TRM Lab raises $70 million. YouTube says Music and Premium together have 80 million paying subscribers, up from 50 million a year ago. That's impressive growth. And payments to creators and others reached 50 billion since 2019. IBM announces its Osprey quantum processor with 433 qubits. Wow, the whole quantum race is still moving forward. Up from 127 qubits in 2021, and plans to hit 4,000 qubits by 2025. And at that pace, we will have legit mind-blowing quantum computers by 2025. In an interview, we can skip that. Okay, The Verge has a Q&A with lawyers challenging the legality of GitHub Copilot, which is a big brouhaha in the developer community, through a proposed class action lawsuit because coders who contributed code to GitHub are now finding that the AI is using ostensibly their code in and not reciprocating them. And this is actually has kind of rather direct. It's a rather direct analog to what's going on with artists and Dolly 2 and the like, where you have the human creators, whether it be code or illustrations or songs or whatever, and then you have AIs who are taking that and consuming it and regurgitating it and putting it out in a new
Tyler,
way.
I'll give the legal analogies. So you're exactly right. And so the Dolly and that type of stuff, the artist one that we talked about, the legal issue there is that it is going around and copying all of the images all over the web. Where the legal issue came up is that it's taking stuff that's licensed, so Getty Images or something, where you actually are supposed to pay a fee before you can start reading and ingesting those images. So it's not that it's some sort of just ethical that it's going around and copying all these artists or making things with the artists. It's that it violated those license grants because it is actually pulling from those images without paying the license fee. So here, what it sounds like with GitHub is open source. So a lot of people know about open source software and it's quote unquote free, but it can have requirements on it. So usually what I just heard you say is the attribution. So a lot of times you'll put the code up and the license will say, yeah, you can use it in your build, you can distribute, you can do whatever, but you have to keep these license terms or provide an attribution in your text files, your README or your whatever license. And it looks like the AI is pulling the code and not complying with that license requirement. So it's allowed to use it, but it's not giving that attribution in its downstream licenses or its downstream release. So that'll be interesting because that is a legal violation.
Jennifer, can I ask real quick? So, as a just a photographer, I take a picture of something, I post it online. So, how is that handled with just anybody's innate ownership of the pictures they take? Like, isn't that
You
copyright
own
law?
it. So the AI, you own it. You own the copyright in that. So someone can't take that exact image and use it. That's the whole. If you remember that one around the Barack Obama Hope photo, like who owns it? The subject doesn't own it. The photographer owns it. And he owns the copyright in it. But what the AI is doing is it's not taking that exact image, right? So it's more of a quote unquote transformation. It's reading a million, millions of images and pulling, a million dogs, a million wearing suits, riding horses on the moon to create a new image. It is based on those images, but it's not a direct copy of it. So it's transformational. So if you so that's another, just for people in the audience, if I take a picture or you take a picture and you post it on the web, it is not in the public domain. It is not free. It is simply on the web. You still own all rights in that. Now, that said, pragmatically, anyone can copy it and pull it down in this digital world and do a
Right,
whole lot.
but then
Right.
the definition of usage. If you're using it to feed the the machine, then you're deriving benefit, and that usage, whether it's to reprint it as one use, but how it sounds like
That's not a
copyright.
protected. No,
Okay,
that's not it. So
it's not
copyright has
protected. I see.
five. Yeah, you're allowed to transform. There are defenses to copyright violation. So it's transformative or it's used for educational purpose, a bunch of defenses. So using it, your outcome is a transformation, basically, is something else. So that's a permissible right. However, if there are additional license terms on it, such as like Getty or other restricted images where you have to pay before you can access them, which is what Dolly is doing, and that's the case against Dolly and those
Is
guys.
this like a residual in an NDA sort of a thing?
No, but that's another. whole totally different thing. Residual and NDA is when you can use information that you have learned in your unaided memory, and that is to avoid having to put people on the bench who have been exposed to confidential information because of the fact that they can't erase it from their memories. So it's actually kind of something totally different, and that gets kind of complicated. But good question.
Jennifer, has there been any result yet from the litigation between Dolly and Getty? I'm just
I don't know. I haven't been following it, so I don't know yet. But I think it'll be. I think all that stuff is going to raise all kinds of new litigation. A lot, in my view, a lot of the and I've heard some speakers on this. Copyright law is a bit antiquated as it applies to the digital world, because it was meant, now that we can make exactly perfect copies of everything and they're all available all over the internet that you can access. It's still our framework, but it's not directly applicable. So it'll be interesting to see.
because a lot of people don't like Getty because they're like a big bully, because you have a lot of people innocently, who might go grab a photo, that they think is in the public domain, of Elton
Yep.
John or somebody, and then they hear from Getty with all sorts of threats. So there'll be gonna be a lot of people who would like to see, their influence broken.
It'll be interesting to see. I don't know the legal terms of it. I'm going to guess that the AI engines are going to say, hey, we didn't use, we somehow read your image in the internet, but we didn't pull it, we didn't actually use it under your licenses, so we're not liable.
They probably didn't use the whole code or part of it at once.
Well, they
It's
read
that they
it versus
used
downloading the
parts
image.
of it. So is the sum of
But
is
but they're
my left shoe and your right shoe copyright protected as a new pair of shoes in some other third work? I think that would be kind of analogous in terms of
well,
trace or
it's
tracking.
reading it. It's reading the image, but it's not like downloading it and using the exact image, right? So it's reading it versus. It's complicated. It gets really
That's why I
complicated.
went.
It's whether
It's
the spectral
accessing it.
decomposition of the matrix that results, to what extent can you trace that back to the original source? And that might be an
But it's
interesting
not.
question.
Well, it's using it internally to build something new. It's not using the way those licenses are, is they're intended for somebody to download that exact image and use it, say, in advertising or something else. I think an analogy here, although it'll be interesting if they make this one, is for people who are in tech, when you're providing support, so you're not allowed to export any data or provide, any PII or anything else can't be exported or can't be used outside the country. You'll see that in licenses all the time, that it can't, if your company's in the EU, that you can't export any of that, your customers' data. However, I think we all know a lot of support is provided from the Philippines and other countries around the world. Support tickets, even though if that support person is viewing, even though it's not on their desktop, they're viewing it on your server in your country, but they can see it, that's considered an export. So it creates a lot of havoc in these licenses and export restrictions. So it's like that. They're viewing it. They have no ability to touch it. It's actually not sitting on their machine. They can't modify it, et cetera, but the fact that they can see it. So maybe they'll analogize to something like that. I don't know. I'm sure it's an interesting case. If I get time, Ken, I can go look.
It's huge stakes, though. I think the amount of legal creativity that's going to emerge is going to be fascinating because, as you say, I think the old structures are not good at preserving the quality or the work, the labor, and I think that's what we're trying to combat here. That these algorithms have an impressive ability to erode human value when we used to value a lot of these things much differently. Some of the companies that I'm talking to are saying, "Oh yeah, we just don't even have an artist for the first conception aspect of this storytelling because we're just now working with it's two writers and Dolly too." And then they move that on. So, like, quite literally, one person in the chain has already been removed in some startups or indie projects. I wonder how far that will go and to what extent will then the industry, because I think the music industry responded with, oh shit, we got to figure out streaming rights. I think a similar thing is going to happen here.
Without a doubt, it's going to happen. Just all of the digital creation, and if you look at marketing services, we're at the point where somebody, and maybe somebody already has, but it's certainly an awesome big opportunity for any kind of startup, is to just create AI-powered, turnkey marketing campaigns. As a marketing director, I can just put in some meta description what I'm looking for, and I can be served a half dozen different executions of some full-on, almost clickable, marketing campaign. Right? It's that's just a number of months out if it's not done already. So I mean, it's going to be, globalization was a big punch in the face. Lots of different job classifications, but don't think that it's not coming after the digital nomads and anybody who's creates digital art of any commercial art of any kind.
Hey, Tyler, I got something in your back channel, breaking international news. You might want to take a look at that.
Go ahead.
I sent it to you personal. It's oh, okay. I put it in. It's the I'm going to pronounce the city wrong, but the Putin's order to withdraw from is it called Kirsten?
It's
In
Kherson.
Pearson.
I just shared that news. Yeah,
yeah, okay.
Putin is withdrawing from Kherson. It's a huge win for Ukraine. I was just sharing this news in the global Telegraph and other news because I wasn't sure if it's okay to share over here. But it's a huge win. Russian retreating from this region, Kherson, which was a huge battleground for Ukrainians. So congratulations to Ukraine. Huge win.
Well, I think what's really interesting is that he chose to withdraw rather than use tactical nukes because he's losing. I think that's important too.
Unless
Yes,
he's
very
withdrawing,
important.
so he can use tactical nukes.
But by stating he's withdrawing, I mean that is the key point there, right? On all these withdrawals, as he, the words that he's using, I think, are really important to pay attention to.
Yep. Okay, so the next topic is Disney hit 235 million global streaming subscribers in Q4, which is now bigger than Netflix at 223 million. Disney Plus had 164 subscribers. Hulu's at 47. ESPN Plus is at 24. Nintendo.
Yeah, but Disney Plus also hit big losses getting there. By the way, so they're losing a lot of money to get there.
They would call it investing, I'm sure.
They
the
do.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. The next is Intel announces a new Xeon CPU family and updated data center GPUs. Nintendo announces a joint venture with another Japanese game company called DNA to co-develop Nintendo games for mobile. Roblox reports Q3 revenue up just 2%. And
And,
Elon
and by the way, Tyler, I mean, I'd have to go look at it again, but I'm going to assume, but I don't want to, I shouldn't assume. So I bet those Disney Plus numbers might include their bundle product with like ESPN. So Netflix doesn't have an equivalent. And there's actually another story that's out today that Netflix is looking at getting some sports rights, not necessarily like big sport. No, they're not looking to get NFL football, but they've been looking at some kind of like second and third tier sports rights over in Europe. So it's very possible that a Disney Plus number includes their bundle packaging. I'm going to go take a look at that and see whether that's the case.
Yeah, please
Yeah,
let me
please let
know
me
if
know if.
the bundle still includes the Hulu and ESPN.
Next, Elon Musk sold 19.5 million Tesla shares worth about $4 billion in the past 4 days. Musk retains roughly 14% stake in Tesla.
Yeah,
As
the Tesla shares were down, and he did make a claim a few weeks ago that the last time he was selling, that would be the final sale, but he's selling again. Very concerning. Another news related to him I would like to share later is about Nikola and his lies about his electric truck.
Yeah, that was so weird. That it's like, hey, a company that tries to be like Tesla. It's like one company calling themselves Albert, the other company calling themselves Einstein, but the former not knowing how to do things like simple chemistry or engineering. I'm surprised that it went so far. So I'm not sure if Tech News ever covered that, but that was a huge and embarrassing story for, I guess, tech innovation. There's two kinds of people. There's people like Elon who come out saying a bunch of crazy things, make a bunch of crazy promises, and land some of those promises. And then there's people who stay in the clouds smoking hua
Well,
or
actually,
whatever.
Elon, they looking at the difference between those. The Elons were contingent, so he was saying they were expectations, whereas Nicholas said they'd already accomplished them. That was the difference, and that's why the CEO has criminal charges against him. And they did things like rolling that truck down a hill, but saying that it was actually under its own power. But it was the firm statements that he said, whereas Elon makes very firm statements, but there's a little bit of wiggle room there, and that's why in these two comparisons, and again, he has accomplished far more. But that's why they're not saying that his absurd statements aren't as actionable as the.
Yeah, but I think Silicon Valley historically has a comparison to like Trump of all things because overhype and underdeliver and with late fees or not at all.
Oh,
And I
don't
think
get me started on Silicon Valley. They're much more. They're so far worse than that. I mean, the SEC is all over those guys. I mean, the SEC's West gets almost all of their cases out of Silicon Valley. That place is an ethics cesspool.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not.
but the fact that billions of dollars showed up when the thing was rolling down a hill, here I am trying to be like, all this data is transparent. We got to make sure that everything, looks great, is legally bulletproof, is morally bulletproof. Let's try to be as responsible as we can be. And then somebody like this comes by and is just so defeating from the perspective of if you're trying to actually build a business and you're doing it honestly, and a guy like this just gets quite a bit of
Yeah, but
money for
just
no
as you
reason.
said, to clarify, that's not unique in Silicon Valley. I'm just saying, and personally, I've experienced it. I've worked at these companies, some of them. So, it's yes, I agree with everything that you're saying. And it's fairly rampant. It's not just the companies; the VCs actually know about it too, because they just need a 1 in 10. So they hype these things as well. So it's a culture here, definitely. And there's a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah.
billions
The
coming out of
culture
here.
of ask for permission, not or sorry, rather ask for forgiveness rather than permission, is like incompatible. For example, for a biotech startup, that's like not even an appropriate approach to take, especially given things like Elizabeth Holmes. So at least now we're seeing like a generation of all these CEOs and crazy folks who were like, yeah, we're gonna sell snake oil. Uh, I hate to say that I like seeing justice, but I like seeing that hard work is going to be valued again because this kind of stuff is not going to slide by so easily. Although I suspect future scams will be even bigger.
Yeah,
Interesting.
one distinguishes fake it till you make it means that you actually have some sort of promise of making it, or that there's an anticipation of actually making it, and that tends to be a lower, like a more ethical. That's closer to a lot of the stuff that really goes on. I mean, there's just a lot of blatant lies down here, so I agree with you, and we'll hopefully see a little bit more of this get corrected. And I do prefer enforcement. I think some of this stuff is so absurdly rampant that I would like to see more enforcement.
Interesting thing was that people used to blame or call out Elon for somehow taking the technology from Tesla, from Nikola, sorry, Nikola, and turned out that the lies that Nikola kind of perpetuated are now in the court of law as proven that he was lying about the technology. He never had the technology, and that rumor kind of was spread out so intensely, so widely. So anytime you say that, oh, Tesla, have these electrical car, people used to say, oh, that technology belongs to Nikola and he is in jail for this technology or whatever. So I'm glad that the truth is out, that he never had it and he was lying all along. And going back to the stock prices and the selling of the Tesla stock, Elon have done that in the past as well. They sell it and then they buy back when the price goes low. So I won't be surprised if they buy back the shares again at the lower price, like they do in the past.
So Tyler, the Disney Plus numbers, I was right. The $220 million, 220 million number. By the way, it's not even a Disney Plus number. That's Disney's total streaming services. So they're including in that number. For example, if you just only subscribe to Hulu and you don't even have Disney Plus, you're in that 221 million. So the Disney Plus number is more closer to like 150 million. And there was some headline I just saw that 40%, and this is just in the U.S., but 40% of their subscribers on Disney Plus are choosing the package with ESPN and Hulu. So I mean, so you have to kind of look at all of those numbers. Netflix doesn't have equivalents to what Disney does because they don't have multiple streaming services and everything else. But the 220 million is not an analogous number to Netflix at all because it literally includes things that don't even have Disney Plus in them. If you're just if you just have an ESPN streaming, or you just have Hulu streaming, you're in that number because Disney's talking about its aggregate streaming services.
Thank you
Disney
for sharing
streaming,
that.
boom.
Thank you for sharing that, Ken, because I know many people who purchase that bundle not because of Disney, but because of ESPN or Hulu itself. So the numbers matter. And if you compare Netflix from Disney individually, there's no comparison.
Okay, next up, as China, this is from Wired, as China encourages digital yuan adoption among its citizens, experts say the digital currency opens up new forms of government surveillance and social control. What? What's going on with this Chinese digital currency?
What do you mean the Secret Service has been tracking every American dollar for decades?
Why didn't anyone tell us about this? Wired. Wired. Why have you been keeping us in the dark about the
Why were
digital?
they not
What
listening to
what
Tyler?
what do
No,
they
why didn't
expect
Gurman
out
tell
of a
us about this?
communist how what what do they expect out of communism, right?
Cheryl
But
pinned it to the top of the room, folks. There, it's breaking news. The Chinese
We
digital
have sound
yuan.
effects now, Tyler. Use the sound effects.
Hey, send them to Xinjiang for some boot camp.
although that would be cool if the money actually looked like that, had a
This
little
is like,
screen built in.
did somebody? It's almost like they tapped into like a uh, oh, not an air horn. What's the time capsule? This article is like something you would find in a digital time capsule from 16 months ago or something.
No, more like 1994. It's like in the future, countries will
No,
track
but
your money
point
digitally.
the point that this article is making was abundantly clear to everyone in this room 16 months ago.
Guess what? They were not here in this room, perhaps. That's why they are lagging behind.
This
Should we
is
do a should we all do
yeah.
a little chant together, a little campfire chant? Do not agree to CBDC. Do not agree to CBDC.
It's just weird that we're
Oh, that's the development bank, right? Is that the reference, Ben? I've just been
Okay, I
reading
need
about
to
the
send you.
largest
Let's send
development
you.
bank,
Send
right?
Eric to the Xinjiang boot camp.
Shishi.
okay. Next up from Financial Times, they say they have sources, which could be the CIA, as we now know, that TikTok cuts its 2022 revenue targets from about $15 billion to $10 billion, as staff complain of overspending on salaries, social events, and more. When you and I actually know it's because the entire ad market is taking a big old poo poo. And that's why, and that's, by the way, that's also why Facebook, the top story today, Facebook laying off 13% or 11,000 team members, by far the biggest layoff it's ever done, really the only substantial layoff it's ever done. And that again is because the entire ad market, which is the core of Facebook's business, is taking a big, big, big boo boo.
Well, I think
And
TikTok was interesting though because the people who were TikTok influencers had a hard time filling rooms of fans, right? So I think there might also be some sort of inflated numbers there just from the activity, because I could imagine that hey, just if one out of 100 Chinese people just occasionally played around on TikTok as some sort of national effort, like hey, everybody just go on TikTok every once in a while, it'll help boost our foreign influence. That's something that is artificially kept up. So if a market is unstable as is the case right now, those kinds of structures easily collapse. So maybe that's why there's a 50% reduction.
Okay, and then the
Oh,
BBC is doing a profile piece on Sri Ram Krishnan, who many clubhousers might
yeah,
know
good times.
from the Good Time show, and he's getting the BBC profile treatment because, as the headline says, the Indian American is quote unquote helping Elon Musk run Twitter. Well, it's well known that Andreessen Horowitz offered Sharon to come over and help because he used to work at Twitter until 2021, according to the BBC article. And Elon could probably use somebody with some inside experience to help make just do a lot of the tough decisions that need to be making over there and navigate the labyrinth that is Twitter. And very cool. The article does mention how they met in part due to when Elon came on the Good Time show, in which Shahram and his partner co-hosted, and that was certainly a memorable moment in Clubhouse history.
Yeah,
And
that blew up the number, right? The user number.
uh, then it's a rather neutral piece, as the BBC's known to be, and God bless them for being such. Yeah, it just talks about his background in a very kind of straightforward way, and that's nice in this day and age that they're not demonizing him for being on Team Trump. Did I say Trump? Team
Trump.
Whoops.
What?
Hey, by the way, Tyler, Nicholas is on stage.
Nicholas. Let's get Nick. Welcome back, Mr.
FTC
Nicholas.
Binance.
Let's get your take, Nicholas, on FTX and CZ
Oh,
and
FTC.
Sam Bank SBF and CZ and
Mhm.
Binance and Bitcoin and crypto. Have you heard of this thing called crypto,
And
Nicholas?
Solana.
So yeah, so the chickens came home to roost, and we talked previously about over-levered markets, and we talked about how the Japanese market was over-levered, and we also talked about how
Fractional reserve.
crypto is massively over-levered, and this is the thing that this reminds me most of is an event that happened in the markets called LTCM, which is long-term capital management. It was managed by a guy called John Gutfriend, and he had a whole bunch of super smart
No,
geniuses,
John
including
Merriweather. That you're confusing two ex Solomon guys.
John Merriweather, not Gutfriend. You're right, John
Yeah,
Merriweather.
yeah.
And sorry to John Gutfriend. So John
Who had his
Merriweather
own
starts.
scandal with the U.S. Treasuries, if you remember. Yes.
I do remember, and so Merriweather, as correctly stated, had a whole bunch of Nobel Prize winning economists involved, and almost blew up the entire market because of a massive amount of leverage. And so it doesn't matter how genius you are, you can always make mistakes, and the market will correct you. And so I think that this really can be seen as a second order effect of the contagion that started with
Yeah,
Celsius. Remember, you used to talk about, oh, SBF is such a savior, and I was like, well, you have to know what he's saving you with, right? So in the case of it seems SBF, and what would have made sense at the time is that they all created treasuries made out of um, you know stacks of straw, and the stacks of straw that were backing up um, FTX were the token
yeah.
um,
FTT.
FTT, and so the uh, the Ponzi-nomics that you heard me talk about DeFi a lot last year, and I was saying, look, DeFi is in the real DeFi is decentralized finance. What is going on at the moment, I remember saying to you, is derivative finance, and as Warren Buffett said very clearly, that derivatives are weapons of mass destruction, and this is what the current version of the crypto market is. It is a speculation based market that is not using software in order to build the next version of the free open internet. It is speculating on false economics that was founded on the zero interest rate policy environment. When there's no yield, people will search for yield and they will take assets and they will margin them. And they have been involved in basically a massive derivative market. And this is exactly what they were due. And the problem is that you can keep these markets going as long as you have confidence in the liquidity availability, right? And this is when people talk about the collapse of the dollar and all this other stuff. It's like you have to understand the depth in those markets, which makes them, what they really are. That's including looking at the depth of the dollar market versus the depth of the Chinese yuan or the Russian ruble. When, the ruble is strengthening. Yeah, okay. There's no liquidity. So you have to look at these guys in the same way. They were really not trying to build the decentralized world. They were trying to get rich, and then they were not content with getting rich. They had to get greedy, and they have been punished for it. And I suspect there will be additional contagion that will ripple through the market over the coming days and weeks. So this is a real event. And if you want to talk about real events and put it into some context for people that were around in the original days of Bitcoin, I think it would be fair to consider this FTX collapse as or capitulation, whichever way you want to call it. I would put it as the same level as Mount Gox. I would put it for Bitcoin. I would put it at the same level as importance as the DAO hack that happened on Ethereum when they reset. I think Celsius and 3AC, Three Arrows Capital, and those other actors were, the precursor to this, which is a major market event. This market event could even create a ripple in the traditional markets if people are massively over-levered and they need to unwind those positions. But I'm not sure that that's necessarily there. But the CFTC are watching to see what market orderliness will be like. So this is a real event.
By the way, we have a few tweets of the official tweets. Blah, blah. Holy cow, was that a tongue twister? There's only a few of the big tech headlines to go through, and one of them is related and very relevant. It's this, that the SEC wins its lawsuit arguing that decentralized publishing platform Library, spelled LBRY, that their token is subject to regulatory oversight in a blow to crypto token issuance, because Library, as call it a website, a service, a Web 2-ish like company that had its own crypto token attached to it, that the SEC, even though Library is totally decentralized, you could think like the Pirate Bay, where the government would have a hard time shutting down the Pirate Bay. However, if the Pirate Bay were to issue a token, then that falls under the SEC, and now the SEC's got their hands on what you're doing, because if you're issuing a crypto token, now you are dancing under the framework that we're going to control. That's our airspace, so to speak. You've entered our airspace. We are interested in preserving any kind of transactions of value of sorts, right? So that's an interesting, important legal precedence that is being established there, that these crypto tokens that are being issued by potentially even seemingly innocuous things like Dogecoin now are Now, everyone needs to be aware that by issuing, you cannot issue these things and not expect to be kind of under the hand of the SEC.
By the way, that case came out a couple of days ago, and you're absolutely right about the significance of it. It's probably more significant than it's got the publicity, or the lack of publicity it's gotten. So it was interesting when Donna was here earlier. I don't know if she's still here. She mentioned, terror and everything. I mean, kind of they got away with it at the time. I mean, this is where it is, and now if companies, if you can't get away with it, it has profound implication on the whole DeFi world.
I
This
think you
this
have
one.
to separate those things. I've only got a few minutes, so I just wanted to address that point. So it is sad about library. The critical thing here is that they issued a token, and so you have to learn that there's a difference between tokens and coins. Coins being public blockchains, and tokens being usually some form of um, fundraising activity that is done on behalf of an organizing team. And so the Howey test is applied. There are four prongs to the Howey test. It's not worth going into, but you can fall down on any one of them, and the SEC can pick you up on any one of them and turn you upside down and turn you around, and that is how they have worked through the enforcement processes, illustrating where people have riled them sufficiently. In the case of library, it seems that they're making a deliberate point. But the key thing to understand is that if you actually issue free open source software and you do it without an ICO and you do it without VC money and you do it by enabling people to participate through software, then you have an opportunity to change these things. So this is all good for decentralization. All these centralized shortcuts are being proven to not work. So the decentralized world can stand up legally and can illustrate to the regular person that it's in their best interest to participate. So these evolutionary steps are good, even the legal stuff.
Okay, next
Have you refreshed the page and look
I
at the
will.
new? Yeah,
Bloomberg
under
says they have
new.
sources that the big record label conglomerates, Universal Music Group, Sony, and Warner, have been negotiating with TikTok owner ByteDance for the share of TikTok ad revenue and increase royalties before the contracts expire, which makes sense because they had to do that with YouTube and Spotify and everybody else. Although in Spotify's case, they actually got equity in Spotify as part of the agreement for the licensing of the content. But yeah, what else here? Microsoft releases 68 security fixes, including patches for 6 actively exploited Windows zero-day flaws. Swiss cheese. If you're running Windows, you're running Swiss cheese, everybody. I have to say, it's been a minute since we've read one of these um, Microsoft vulnerability 0 days. They used to be every day. And our dear friend Chris used to remind us every day that he was calling from a burner phone precisely for these reasons. And it's to Microsoft's credit, it's been more than a week since we've read one of these Swiss cheese articles reminding us just how many holes are in this block of Microsoft cheese. No offense to our friend Matt, of course. So, those are your big boring headlines for today. And now we get to go into.
Tyler, on Microsoft, by the way, I got a letter or note from them, and I actually asked Matt about it, and he didn't know about it. So was wondering if anyone else had gotten this or what they thought. They sent out a letter to like everybody who's got like an Outlook account or something that starting, I think, sometime the end
Hold
of
on.
next year, right? There's certain types of email structures you're not going to be able to use,
Sorry,
like
Ken.
a
Ken, I'm sorry. We got breaking news, folks. This just in. After looking at FTX's data and loan commitments, Binance is highly likely to scrap the acquisition of FTX. FTX was turned down by Coinbase and others. Backing out would be one more stunning development in the collapse of Sam Bankman-Fried's crypto empire. And this story's got a lot of steam, as you can imagine. This is now the hot.
Oopsie.
the hot, hot, hot story, and it adds more credence to the theory that CZ is actually not Sam's friend and was set on destroying him, despite what you may have heard to the contrary. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was clear when it was subject to due diligence and heads of terms, and who
Yeah.
is going to, when all the clients are going to flow to either you or Coinbase anyway, who is going to pay money to take on liabilities? It's just a temporary reprieve. If you look at this, the token, it's at 376 right now.
Wild. Major
And I think their
coins are
users are
plummeting.
likely duplicated too, right?
Say again, Joe?
I say their users are likely duplicated too. I mean, the,
I
the,
don't
the,
think it.
the
I
users
don't
on
think it really
Binance is
matters.
probably on FTX
Oh
as
yeah,
well. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah. I see what
majority
you're
are
saying.
Chinese users anyway.
I'm not sure about that because obviously Binance is precluded from acting in certain markets where FTX was licensed. So, you know, it doesn't really matter. The point is, this is a giant being slayed, and it's all the geniuses from the VC world are just prove that the king has no clothes.
Bloomberg
Emperor.
says they have sources that the SEC and the CFTC are investigating FTX over handling customer funds and its relationship with other parts of Sam's empire, meaning Alameda, of course.
So running a fund of FTT tokens that are collateralizing and I thought it was strange when Musk turned down the offer from SBF, and I'm assuming that he must have been offering him tokens or trying to collateralize his tokens with other assets. It
Right.
reminds me a lot of AOL, Time Warner, that it has that feeling. So in the financial realm, it has the feeling of LTCM, but in the media realm, it has the feeling of AOL, Time Warner because of the desperate dealing to convert, paper into real assets as the market was declining. So this is going to be an interesting one. The biopsy is going to be interesting.
So what I was about to say, and I'm trying to find the actual letter. I got a letter from Microsoft. I mean, it wasn't individual to me. I'm sure millions of people got it. Just hasn't got a letter of publicity. That starting at some point at the end of next year, like if you've got like a personalized email, like a lot of people do, that's why I don't understand they're going to get rid of them. Tyler. Let's say you're working at a company or something, or so it's Tyler at XYZ company or X, and then you'll have Cheryl at XYZ company. They're not going to let you have these individualized emails. And I'm saying, like, well, how's everyone going to send an email then? I couldn't understand it, but and they said they're going to grandfather the ones that are already there, and I'm still trying to understand it. That's why I asked Matt about it. He didn't know about it, and I was wondering. A lot of people have Outlook accounts. Did anybody else get like a letter like that? That there's going to be like certain email formations that are now permissible that are not going to be permissible going forward. At least new ones.
I think you're going to have to take this one to the help desk.
Ken, I saw this as well. The way I read it is, you only have until they're going to sunset the ability to keep creating the new or whatever what they had in the past. You can't keep making a completely creative email address, but it will still forward to you, and you'll still be able to use the one you have already. But they're just trying to, I think, end of life that paradigm.
So, what email addresses do you think are going to be permissible? You got to start a new one a year from now. So this is what I'm confused about. But
They
by
told
by
me that it says anything that says Ken Frankel on it is out.
Bad news for Voyager people. Also wanna chime in about Elon Musk's recent tweet or the news that he's going to hold the Twitter Spaces. to talk or communicate with the major advertisers after tweeting the name and shame kind of tweet against them. Sorry, my puppy in the background is very loud.
Tyler, you
Okay.
there?
Yeah, I'm here. Now we can do the tweets. Yeah. So Meta's India head boss chief is quitting to join Snapchat. That's gotta hurt Facebook. Ouch. That's one of their most important markets. Bosses moving to its what they perceive as their main competitor outside of TikTok, of course. That one's got a sting. And then Aram has, when growing brain cells in a lab, clinical and ethical implications. Researchers have been developing brain tissue models and experimenting with them in a laboratory. Perhaps not a surprise. And Tomoko has one that Musk discusses putting all of Twitter behind a paywall. Will he go through with it? And is that even accurate? And anyway, someone, Casey at the at Platformer, seems to think so.
That's one of the classic free speech moves that you do when you're
I,
all about free speech. You say, "I'm going to paywall the whole thing." But I do want to, I did want to actually. I don't know if you brought up this point, but I think it's important to call out the fact that this whole free speech thing is a lie because there is no free speech on a private company. It's not a public company even anymore. It's a private company, and it's only if the government is restricting your speech that it's of any relevance. So if Twitter, Twitter restricts your speech, or restricts speech, absolutely, in many realms, in order to satisfy the regulator, so that it can maintain its existence. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear that this is just a narrative from Musk about free speech. It's a nonsense.
Well, it isn't the regulator because that would be the government that's necessarily putting in the United States. Europe's different, by the way. That's putting that pressure on. It's more advertisers, right? So he can't have a complete cesspool on Twitter.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely agreed. It is the advertisers that will not support that the type of speech that really is permitted by the government, and so it is a moderated format. But the point is that he's pretending that free speech is what he's trying to defend, but he's trying to get private data on all of the users and then to moderate that speech or not moderate that speech, however he chooses. It's completely the antithesis of what free speech is.
Okay, did anyone else have a tweet that they want to make sure we cover today?
Tyler, can I comment on the brain cell tweet?
Sure.
Okay, it's really important for the biotech companies, this experimentation, because the lab grown tissues are very nice ethical way to experiment on how the brain cell respond to, for example, any medications. It's also important for the space medicine research, because people who are planning for the next, endeavor, human beings going to Mars, for example, we would like to know ahead of time how the brain cells respond to lower Earth orbit or beyond, how the radiation affect the cells. So this kind of tissue growth in the lab allows that kind of experiment to take place on ISS and beyond. And I kind of tweeted this to Dr. Shanaya Pandya. She's one of the leading experts who's doing the research of human pregnancy in space. And last week I had a discussion with her in terms of how Chinese already have the zygotes, which is like an advanced kind of a replication of the embryo research on, taking place on Moon. And we don't have that kind of data. available to us. So there are ethical implications, yes, of course, because combining human brain cells with animal cells is an issue. But at the same time, you would not like to send human beings in space later to find out how their cells are getting affected in space. So there's like a dilemma in between. So the tissue cells that are being used, although there is ethical issue, but would allow us to understand how, and it's very important for the future research for space travel.
Okay. BB found one from the BBC, as she often does, that the headline says 3D printed guns warning over growing threat of 3D firearms. Police say they are seizing 3D printed weapons in greater numbers in the UK.
So in the US, because it's much easier to get guns than UK, so I just wonder how this is how is 3D printed guns and weapons now in
So
the
there's
US.
a couple of things to think about those. They're not going to last long if they're just made out of 3D printed filament. And secondly, you need the ammo, and you can't 3D print the ammo. So in the UK, one of the main reasons we have such little gun issues is not just that it's hard to get a gun, like about £5,000 on the black market probably, but every round of ammunition is going to cost you that as well, because they've got you by the short and curlies once you've got a gun. It's no use without the ammunition. So 3D printing a gun is fine, but you've still got to source the ammunition somewhere, and don't expect it to last a long time.
Can they still shoot rubber bullets though?
Well, you still got to have rubber bullets. Still come out of a metal casing, right? So they're just you still have a metal casing, and you still have gunpowder or some equivalent in a metal casing with a with the igniter and all the rest of it. So those bits can't be 3D printed.
Well, you can
Okay.
3D print the gun pretty easily, though. So in terms of like what standard designs, there's obviously the MacGyver design out there. Like, look, I printed a gun with plastic, didn't blow my own hand off. Congratulations! But there are other instances where you can quite literally almost print an entire Glock, assemble it yourself, and then it's just a matter of getting the ammunition, as Ben said. Although in the UK, I think everything's a little bit more highly restricted. Although smuggling in a printer is a little bit easier. Although again, the parts that are used, the kind of lasers, are regulated to some extent, so the government can keep track of it, loosely speaking.
Even easier, even in nearly any country, you can order paintball guns that can be incredibly simply that anyone can modify in no time and no effort at all, with strong air. And paintball guns use little balls of paint that still hurt, by the way. And if you replace those with glass marbles or steel balls or pepper spray balls, you can do an incredible amount of damage to anything that you hit with that.
Sounds like
The
you would
police,
be an awesome enemy to encounter in PUBG or Fortnite or something. You're like, and I took these marbles and I put it in this paintball, and I'm like, oh shit.
or as the proprietor of a private island who takes who takes defense very seriously and has given it years of thought. Anyway, pepper balls are a very real thing, and even in countries where pepper spray is illegal. So pepper balls are just like paintballs filled with pepper. That as long as you hit the person or anywhere near them, they will become incapacitated momentarily for several minutes, about 30 minutes.
You can also,
And
with your own syringes, you can make your own little injectable cocktail into existing paintball rounds. So that's also fun.
Pepper
in
ball
which
will
case
only
you
be
could,
painful if you get into the eyes, right? Otherwise, it's fine, right?
Oh no, paintballs give me bruises.
No,
Paintballs are
paper ball, pepper ball.
if
Oh
the
yeah,
oh
pepper,
it'll still give you
you
bruises.
can you could inhale that
sure,
would be
Ah,
horrible, inhaling pepper. If it's
an, an exploding pepper ball has a
exploding.
range of about a meter. So as long as the ball explodes within a meter of the person's eyes, they will become
Yeah,
incapacitated.
yeah. I think ice is crucial.
Yeah, but the fumes of the exploding pepper ball travel about a meter.
And,
So
and you know, the pepper can give you instant shock. You can just stop breathing all of a sudden, depending on which part of the trachea or, your
well,
bronchial breathe.
you
It
could be
hit.
there's no point in using pepper if that's your aim. You could use fentanyl balls
Oh
and
my
have
God.
somebody overdose on
Damn.
fentanyl easily.
So are you
Sounds like
using
a great new
pepper
series on
balls
Netflix.
on the monkeys
Hey, I
on the
missed you
island?
guys. We got to fentanyl balls. I
Now
was
let's just
like,
put this
I
on
was
that
like, I was
flying
like,
drone dog
The
and we're
Marvels
set.
sound interesting, but they got fentanyl balls.
I was thinking of bleach balls, Trump's favorite, why not add bleach to it?
The
Boston
beautiful part
Dynamics, no
about
sense.
fentanyl balls is the person will have been believed to have overdosed on fentanyl of their own accord, of course. Um, so, on that happy note, we will do it again tomorrow. Can Ben do in the room today?
Yeah, we have two
Yep.
rooms ongoing right after this, Ben's room and Messy's Tech News Around Africa. So if you click on Tech News Club on top, you'll be able to see two rooms side by side. So please join
Fantastic.
them. If not, see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay. See you, everybody.